Wait a minute. This isn't Halo. Hey guys, this is Anong. At the minute I'm actually starting to create content for my channel, so I figured I'd take a few minutes to give my impressions on the Destiny Alpha now that it's finished. The format of this video is going to be a kind of stream of conscious thing, instead of anything immediately scripted, so if I ramble on, please elect to ignore me. But not before subscribing. Before I talk about the Alpha, I'm going to give a brief recap on my relationship with the Halo franchise. I've been a huge fan since the original Xbox, which I bought specifically for Combat Evolved. Since then, I've spent a ridiculous amount of money over the years on collector's editions, soundtracks, t-shirts, figures, and collectibles, so it says a lot when Halo 4 killed my interest in the series stone dead. I know that sounds overly dramatic, but it is true. It was inferior in every way. The campaign was... it was alright. Although I didn't appreciate having to read a litany of books to understand the story, and the multiplayer was a mess. So obviously, I'd be incredibly interested in whatever Bungie had to produce next. So when Destiny was announced, it wasn't surprising that it had all the trappings you'd expect from a Bungie game. Dudes in armour, alien civilizations, and lovely skyboxes. Between that and talks of the online integrated MMO stuff, I must admit that I was initially worried about how similar it looked to Borderlands, both in terms of colour palette, and also the numbers that pop out of people's heads when you shoot them. I've never really been a fan of those games, unfortunately. But luckily, I can say that the Alpha alleviated my fears, and now I'm completely on board with Bungie's vision. So, I'm going to talk about the general impressions of Destiny that I have, such as the gameplay, graphics, and other features. So how does Destiny hold up graphically? It's a very nice looking game. It's very sharp, with a smooth frame rate, and the lighting looks amazing. I think, like Halo, how good it looks is due to art design, as opposed to, graphical horsepower. Halo 3 looked dated the day it came out, but was carried by great art design. The armour sets and alien designs look unique and interesting as well. I do think a lot of the atmosphere stems from Bungie's talent of making incredible settings that feel great to inhabit, and this is only the Earth stuff we've seen so far, and a little bit of the Moon. Letting us explore other planets will allow for some great variety and imagination in the places we explore, and I'm hyped for how Bungie will handle various other planets and moons. I do think the most praise should be heaped on the skyboxes though, that once again steal the show. They are breathtaking in both art design and draw distance, and really help sell the environments as vast and unconquerable. Seeing the Traveller, looming over the Citadel and the futuristic city below, evokes the same feelings I had when I first laid my feet on the Halo Ring worlds. I think it's easy to say that it'll look great graphically. It's a AAA shooter backed by Activision, for Christ's sake. They literally have a small island's worth of money to throw at Bungie to make the game look as good as it can. So what about the gameplay? Well, it's definitely Halo. In some ways, I'd argue it's more Halo than Halo. Well, at least 4 anyway. It's responsive with that slightly floaty feeling when you jump, but overall it feels quick and responsive. And I think they've made a good compromise while adding more modern features, like, aiming down sights and knife throwing and double jumps, which echoes Titanfall. But overall, it has that 30 seconds of fun that you come to expect from Bungie's games, and it just makes it feel great to play. The additions of summoning vehicles and supers are also a great addition that helps set it apart from the pack. The feel of the weapons is also impeccable. Although it could be argued that they lack the variety of something like Borderlands, there are still plenty of guns and stats to play with. You've got classic weaponry such as pistols, shotguns, machine guns, as well as sci-fi weapons like plasma weapons and, rocket launchers and etc. The way the weapons handle is just pure Halo, with the sniper rifle in particular feeling like a direct lift from Halo. Not a bad thing at all. Also, the way you create your character feels like the logical conclusion from what Reach started. And considering this is the alpha, I imagine we've only seen the tip of the iceberg in terms of player customization. The element I can't praise enough in this game is the online implementation, and this is something I didn't really anticipate. I've always enjoyed Halo games as a single player experience. Obviously I'm a big fan of the multiplayers, but it's the single players that really drew me into that world and sold me on the franchise. This really does stick out as an online integrated experience, with people dropping in and out of your gameplay, with the choice to interact with them being solely up to the player. This is obviously a Dark Souls inspiration, and it helps the world feel more alive. I do think the Borderlands comparisons are kind of bullshit though, because other than first person health bars and head numbers, the similarities really end there. This is more of a Phantasy Star Online cross-Halo game. Reflecting on it highlights how far ahead of its time Phantasy Star Online truly was. With Halo 4, each character felt unbalanced, and random weapon drops left the player's fate up to chance. Chasing the COD crowd really shot them in the foot. The way Destiny offsets this is with heavy ammo being itself the pickup, which allows for map control, which is a really excellent way of doing it. Another aspect is the double jumping, which, like the jetpacks from Reach and parkour from Titanfall, adds a nice verticality to the maps. So finally, I'm going to talk about my criticisms of Destiny. The first isn't really a criticism, but I am interested to see how the single player story pans out. I think they've done something really interesting with the setting by, instead of going with a generic space opera, it's basically high fantasy in space, with terms like mages, guilds and summoning being thrown about. It's a unique way to do things, instead of the generic "Oorah! Marines" or Tolkien-esque high fantasy that we get in abundance these days. Hopefully the campaign is focused and the online doesn't detriment that. Another thing is that the characters seem quite faceless. The main character we see is this little floating robot called Ghost, who is played by Peter Dinklage of Game of Thrones fame, and unfortunately his performance isn't that great. Now, I don't know if it's a creative choice by Bungie to avoid comparisons of Cortana, an overly emotional performance, or 343 Guilty Spark, who speaks kind of in a chirpy C-3PO-esque way. Dinklage's character in comparison sounds flat, and like that of a man sitting in a studio talking into a microphone. I pulled some of the audio myself and messed around with it. Now, I'm no audio wizard, pun intended, but I do think this sounds a little better.
Okay, the Skywatch is just on the other side of the steps. And it's surrounded by Fallen. Well, I'm ready if you are. Okay, the Skywatch is just on the other side of the steps. And it's surrounded by Fallen. Well, I'm ready if you are.
So I think even just adding a bit of distortion helps it immensely. It helps make it sound a bit more robotic and a little less like a man in a studio. I don't even think the performance is that bad per se, I just think the audio mixing sounds empty and not actually like it's coming from anywhere. I can totally see why certain people thought that it was first person narration. Hopefully this is something that Bungie can fix with time. The only other criticism I can think of is Destiny's cross-generation nature, which I think is going to hurt it in the long run like it's hurt quite a few other games recently. The PS3 and 360 had their time, almost a decade now, which is a long-ass generation, so I think people are ready to move on. Also, I think shackling new games to old generation hardware just hurts the game. And this isn't even necessarily a problem I have with just Destiny. One of my main complaints when Halo 4 was announced for the 360 was that they should have bided their time, sat on the Halo franchise, let it regenerate, and return it in the next generation to much hype. But obviously they have that money to chase. And even then, it's a moot point as the data is showing a massive drop-off in last generation sales. Other than a lack of polish, which again could be attributed to the 4 versions of the game being made, I've got no other real criticisms. This is an alpha and I assume it's an old build. I must say though, that the alpha has really changed my mind and put me from an apathetic interest at best, due to Bungie's involvement, into super hyped roll on September day 1 purchase mode, yeah! So anyway guys, feedback would be fantastic as this is my first video, and I'm not going to ask for likes or subscribes, but that would really help. So thanks for watching and keep your eyes peeled for more content, which is definitely maybe potentially going to happen soon.